Welcome to Vibes Revealed,
a podcast dedicated to pulling back the veil around wellness with your hosts,
Taylor McKiska
and Jay Tollett.
We believe living well is for everyone,
and no topic is taboo. Join us on our journey as we redefine what it means to be truly well in a modern world.
We're celebrating everyday magic,
but always keeping it real.
Let's vibe. We are here. This is episode 12 of Vibes Revealed. Today we're talking about angels and guides? Question mark?
Angels and guides. The question mark is actually appropriate, and we should leave that in the title.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about angels and guides, and we don't have a guest today. I think I kind of thought we could get it ready with the guest all in time. And TBH, I've been a pretty bad communicator. I have just had a hard time following up and getting things locked in. So we don't have a guest, but that's okay because I actually feel really good talking about this topic, just the two of us, because talking to and communicating with angels and guides is definitely primarily the way that I work. Like that's the majority of the spiritual work that I do. And when I read tarot, even though sometimes I don't always say this to people, or when I'm doing Reiki, I don't always say like, yes, I'm talking to your angels and guides right now, because I feel like that's something people don't get or don't feel comfortable with or have an idea about what angels are or what guides are, what they're supposed to be. But that's what I'm doing. So the messages that I am channeling, the information I'm receiving, I feel like I'm getting it directly from the querent, the person I'm reading for, reading with, the person I'm working with. I feel like I'm getting that information from their angels and guides.
So you are the expert here, and I personally have no idea what I'm talking about this week. Literally no idea, but I think it's going to be a great conversation.
We'll see. No one had any questions. We kind of threw it out at the end there last week if anyone had any questions or had any feelings about angels and guides or anything they wanted to know, and no one said anything. So we're just gonna, whatever comes out is what's gonna come out. Before we do that though, what's up? Like, how is it going?
I wasn't ready for this one. I was hoping you were going to come up with like a specific question that I could answer. Things are going really great though. I think what's really up is that I've been cleaning out my mom's garage, and she's lived in this house since 1985.
Wow.
And I don't know if my mom's going to love me airing her dirty laundry on this podcast like this, but the truth of the matter is my mom is switching homeowners insurance for the first time in several years. And so to get homeowners insurance, you have to go around and take a bunch of pictures around your house. So my childhood bedroom is currently stuffed with everything that I took out of my Los Angeles apartment, and I just like lined my walls with shit. So like my childhood bedroom is a goddamn mess. It's packed with shit. It's like a mattress leaning up against the side of the wall because there was already furniture in there that had nothing to do with me. So it's a mess in there. And then also my mom's garage it looked like just like a cathedral of moving boxes, of just like collected souvenirs, keepsakes, things over the years that are all of my sisters. I had 3 older sisters, so a lot of people's shit. But the rest of my mom's house is like immaculate. Like she thinks that the house is dirty when you can like see one speck of dust floating around in the air. So my mom sends these pictures to the homeowners insurance people, and they were like, there's evidence in your home that you're a hoarder, so we can't insure you.
No.
Yes. And it's because of my bedroom and the garage. Because everything else, it's like you'd think that it was a model home. Like it's so clean. And when my mom came in to tell me, I mean, when I tell you cleaning out the garage has been something that I've been dreading since literally 2008. Like it's been my entire adult life that I was just like, oh, the day we have to clean out this garage is. So when she told me, she's like, you need to figure out the bedroom and the garage, because like I mean I lose my insurance if we don't figure this out. So
Oh
I
my
was
God.
like, oh my God. But like cleaning out the garage has been so emotionally cathartic to just cut ties with my childhood home. I'm throwing shit away, like baby dolls from when I was 8 years old pictures of like squirrels that I thought it would be like a good idea to take a picture of on my sixth grade retreat, like a bunch of shit. And as I'm throwing this shit away, like old Halloween costumes, all this stuff, and as I'm throwing it away, I'm like, this is no longer mine. This is no longer my home. This is no longer my home. And I'm just like cutting energetic ties with my childhood home. And I think that's really like what I needed to be able to say, okay, now I'm ready to leave this place.
Hmm.
And so I'm grateful. Honestly, I just gave you like a 10-minute, like, this is how I'm doing. You asked for it. So yeah, that's what I've been going through for the last few days. And it's been a cathartic experience. And I feel really good.
That's great.
How are you?
It's funny. I think we're having sort of like oddly parallel experiences because I just told you before we started recording that. So I just walked back into my apartment for the first time after being out of town. And I told you it felt really empty to me. Like I walked in and I just felt like there was nothing here, even though it was like all my same stuff was here before I went on this trip. And I walked in and I just felt like there were these white walls and open space, and it felt just like totally nothing, like not even not even neutral, just like nothing. It felt like nothing. And it I don't really know what that means yet because I think I literally just experienced it like 25 minutes ago for so um yeah, but it was a really trippy feeling to walk in and I am usually someone who's very attached to my apartment. If you know me personally, you know that I'm like, oh, I love my apartment. It's so cute. I've put so much into it. Like, I've spent thousands of dollars making this place feel like homey and cozy. And I have blankets and pillows and lots of color everywhere. And it just felt like totally nothing when I walked in. So it's really weird. But yeah, I don't know what that means, but it's funny when you were talking about like going through stuff from childhood. Also, I moved a lot as a kid, and I moved a lot as an adult too. This is the place I've lived in the longest by far, like pretty much in my whole life. And when you were talking about like, yeah, just go finding baby dolls and stuff like that, the only thing I can remember from my childhood that I actually still wish I had, like, I don't really remember any toys I played with or things that came with me from house to house because I think a lot of stuff just didn't. But I remember we had this, it was like a chest and it was a Christmas decoration and it was something we would put under our Christmas tree. And when you opened it up, it had all of these like little Christmas characters and they were all like tiny, and you would like open the chest and like press a button, I think, and it would like play this song, and all the characters had like little different movements that they did, or like
Aw.
little drummer boy would hit his drum, and like a snowman would like tip his hat or something. But it was like there were probably like 25 characters that were like 2 inches tall, and they all just did different shit, and this song would play. And I think the last time we had that, I was probably like 6, and then it got lost in the mix and my parents divorced, and I think like probably went into a storage unit, and who knows what happened to that storage unit, and everything and it was gone. But that is like the only thing I really remember from my childhood that I'm like, dang, I wish I still had that.
Aw.
But everything else, I don't even remember it at all. Like I couldn't tell you a single other toy I had as a kid
Right.
that like
Right.
I
I mean,
ever played with.
definitely what I was noticing as I'm going through this shit, because it's like I've lived here my entire life, and I see the things that I remember in each decade of my life being like, this is what I'm going to keep forever. And now as I get to the next decade, I'm like, you thought that about this, And it's like, and I remember being 10 and being like, oh, I've got to save this forever. And I remember being 20 and being like, oh, this one's coming with me. This one's for the grandkids. And now I'm like, I don't need any of this. I mean, there's a few things that I'm definitely going to keep. And I'm so grateful that everything I've ever loved and everything I've ever owned is in my possession still. Like, I recognize the privilege of that, but like, it's felt good to just be like, you don't need this. Take a
Totally.
picture, like, move on.
Well, that's fun. That's always fun to do.
To me, it's my worst nightmare, but this week it feels good.
Good.
Let's do a card of the combo.
Yeah. So since we're talking about angels and guides today, even though when I read tarot, I still feel like I'm communicating with angels and guides, I wanted to pull from an oracle deck. So oracle decks are a little different than tarot decks because they're very unique to the artist. So, I mean, all decks are unique to the artist, but I think especially with oracle, it's really like the creator of the deck. Every oracle deck has totally different imagery, meanings, guidebooks. Like with tarot, you're pretty much getting 78 cards, four suits, the archetypes, but with an oracle deck it can really be anything, and I feel like they are in so many ways very divinely guided. People who create oracle decks, they're like a special kind of channel. So we are pulling from the Weird Sisters Oracle by Casey of Wanderers Tarot. I'll put that in the show notes if you want to check them out on Instagram. I have wanted this deck for a really long time. I've been looking at it for like probably over a year and have always kind of been, I don't want to say like anti-oracle, but it's not really my thing. Like I'm definitely a tarot reader and not a super oracle person, but I'm getting more into it as I have gotten more into communicating with angels. So I'm excited to see what we get here. And also, I'm just gonna like I'm not coming up with an interpretation myself. I don't feel like I've worked with this deck long enough, so I'm just gonna read it straight from the book.
Love it.
So instead of card of the convo, I guess really we're just asking if our I'm going to ask specifically of our angels, if our angels have any messages for the two of us while we record this. Oh my gosh, this is actually interesting because this is the first card that I pulled when I opened this deck and shuffled it and was like, do my angels have any messages for me? And it's the same card that I pulled
I
the
guess this
last
is the
time.
message.
It's Sigil for Eros. I'm going to read you the interpretation of this. And I thought this was interesting because I definitely feel like it's something I'm lacking.
You don't lack anything, Taylor.
Oh, thank you. Use this sigil for infusing pleasure into your life. May all mundane acts become sensually pleasing. This sigil supports embodied sexuality and fully expressed desires. Tap into the channel of your true passion. Place this sigil on a pleasure altar or in your bedroom. The ruling planet is Venus. So I think that's nice.
I think that's nice. Here's what's coming up for me: finding pleasure in things that I very normally would not find pleasure in, and more likely would actually find pain in them. And then
Mm,
in that, realizing that pleasure and pain are very similar experiences.
I
And
like
that's
that.
what I've channeled for the day.
Amazing.
That's it.
Yeah. So that's our card of the convo. I feel so sleepy. Like I can't even formulate a sentence. Anyway, we'll move on. Angels and guides.
That was a solid 20 minutes of intro.
It's funny because it's like usually I have all these questions. Like I have a bunch of questions to ask and I just like I don't even have any questions.
So let's take it from the top. What's at the top of this conversation with angels and guides? Who are guides?
I think of guides as very much the way described in that book, Journey of Souls, that all of us have guides. And contrary to that book, I think we have way more than one. I think we have like multiple guides that may have had human experiences, may have not, may just be, different energy beings from past lives or other planets, but beings that are in our field, that are in our energetic field, that we can consciously connect to. And I mean consciously in a way that I know I'm doing it, like my brain knows I'm doing it, and I'm choosing to communicate with them. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not happening by accident.
Right. But can you
I
also
think I think
keep
with
going?
guides also, guides have a better idea of the way that our paths can play out. And I think guides help us, they guide us. They help us see things, they give us messages, they give us nudges to go certain directions. And I think guides are much more involved in our day to day, where I see angels as like protection and encouragement. But guides will give you a hard, like, don't do that. No, that's a no. Or like,
Mm,
yes, 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 yes. Like they really want to like give you these clear signs and signals, where angels will just like I pray to angels when I'm on a plane. Like, hold
mhm.
this thing up. Keep it
Okay.
in the air and safely guide us down, you know?
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
I know that that was like so slow. I was trying to think about it as I went, but
I don't think it was slow. I mean, we have to assume some people are like, "What the fuck is a guide?" Because before you can have conscious communications with your guides, you have to have conscious awareness of something beyond the material world. And a lot of people aren't there, and a lot of people will never get there. So I feel like when we're talking about guides but not conscious communication with them, guides could be gut feelings. Guides could be random thoughts that pop up into your head for no reason, and you're like, why the fuck did that thought just pop into my head? And it's things like, oh, you should do this, or this might help you do this, and you're like, how did I just get that thought? Probably from a guide, you know? And I think I like the idea of guides because there's no religious or supernatural connotation that gets attached to the word guide.
mhm.
A guide, whether you choose to think of it as like an embodied thing or just like a guide, like a guidepost, go this way. Signs are guides, you know? So I like the word because it's so neutral and it's something that we're so familiar with that it's easy to understand, even if you're not like in this spiritual world, self help world. It's just like, what is a guide? A guide is a feeling, a guide is a sign, a guide is a hint that
Yeah.
comes maybe from outside of you, maybe from inside of you. Who knows where the fuck it comes from because it's not physical. We don't exactly, there's no science to this.
Yeah.
But I
Sometimes I
think,
do think guides become physical though. Like
oh, definitely.
when you just like meet someone who tells you the thing, or like gives you an opportunity,
Absolutely.
or uh something like that. Yeah. I think that's
Right.
it is guides have this sort of limitless possibility in the ways that they can show up,
Yes.
and it can be really physical. It can be a reoccurring I don't know, sequence of events, or you keep hearing the
Mm.
same word, or
Synchronicity.
yeah, I think guides show up in all sorts of ways, and it is nice that there's not like a certain religion or spiritual practice that has any sort of like claim over guide.
Right. People do use the term spirit guide. And I
Yeah.
think that comes from indigenous tradition, Native American, or First Peoples tradition, I should call it. Spirit guides are something that the shamans connected with, like in their meditative theta states where they were full blown connecting with the ethereal realm, and spirits of ancestors, guides from their past lives were coming to them to communicate with them, not necessarily the future, but how their path might play out or how the path of their community might play out. So guides do play a very specific role in a lot of, I don't want to call it religious, but in a lot of traditions.
Mhm.
But then they're also just, like we said, things in your life or people in your life or feelings that pop up. So I love guides. I love to believe that I am divinely guided because then, it's an easy way to just like really not feel alone.
Yeah, I like the idea of being guided by anything.
Yeah.
Like when I need to build something and it just comes with like a clear set of instructions of, you know, where you
Yes.
like see each piece and then it tells you in which order they go, and it's a guide I'm very down for.
Yeah. So let's talk about angels on the flip. What's an angel?
I think of angels as just sort of like protective and encouraging beings. For me, I never see my angels as like human, even though I think for a lot of people they come through that way. Like I don't see deceased loved ones, not that I have many, but I don't like, for me those aren't angels.
Okay.
And I think that's the thing about when we talk about angels and guides. I really do think it's different for everybody. Like the way that something might come through for you, that you might think of it as an angel, where I would be like, oh, that's a guide. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
I mean, totally.
I think of angels as not having such specific instruction, as just sort of being there for support, reassurance, protection. I like I said, I always call in my angels when I get on a plane, and I imagine
This
them. I call on the angels of actually everybody on the entire plane, pilots, crew, every passenger, and ask that all of our angels like guide us safely to our intended place to land.
Okay, I love this. This is opening some doors for me. I thought that angels were spirits of deceased loved ones. That's what I was going off of, and I think that's
But your
from.
angels might be.
Well, I mean, I know I have never connected with my angels, and
Mm,
I have deceased loved ones. My dad's dead. I would love for him to show up, in the form of an angel. Haven't really seen that, but I never really. I think it comes from my break with religion,
mm,
where I just kind of cut out all of those things. I was like, huh, I'm cutting this out. And then with that, angels went and I never thought about them again. And I only have recently begun connecting with my guides in any sort of conscious way anyway. And so I think just angels, the door hasn't been reopened yet.
mm.
And I think when I was young, I used to think of like if I lost a grandma or a close like family member that I loved, my family would tell me she's an angel now. She's watching over you. So I just thought that there were a lot of dead people up in the sky somewhere in heaven looking down on me. And I never thought too much about it because I never really felt unsafe or that I needed protection or that I had to pray to anything or anyone or call on anyone specifically like as a child. That wasn't really a thought, which I I see the privilege. I felt very protected as a child and I didn't have much to fear, and I'm grateful for that. And so now I'm kind of like, what role do angels play in my life? And even now, I don't really ask for protection. It's a very me thing to just assume that I can protect myself. Like that's something that I would like to grow out of. And it's definitely like, because yeah, I've gotten to points where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do this alone, but I'm not comfortable asking for anyone else to protect me because it doesn't feel right, you know, even when it's spiritual beings. So, yeah, I would like to find a way to relate to my angels more and let them have a role in my life.
Yeah. I think when I first learned about calling in, to use another term, and when I call in, the only thing I ever really call in is angels and guides. And by calling in, I mean literally like I'm asking them to come into the room with me.
Mhm.
And I first heard about that definitely in a session with someone who did that and said like, okay, before we get into the session, I want to call in all of our angels and guides. Of She always uses calling in all of our angels and guides of the highest vibrations of love and light. That never was my like. I think that that's a wonderful sentiment, but I would always call in angels and guides who see and support my highest and best. And that's what I've been saying for years. So I just started saying that. I never really had before that. That was probably like 5 years ago. I hadn't really thought much about it. I grew up Catholic. Angels were definitely part of the conversation. But yeah, for some reason, I just never associated that like people would become angels, even though lots of people do say that they have a family member or someone who is a guardian angel, and I totally believe they can be. I think that even as a little kid, the idea of, I don't know why, I always felt like heaven felt really like getting stuck to me. So
Mm.
I didn't like the idea that if someone died and became an angel, that they were like stuck as an angel and they were going to be like in heaven.
Oh, that's interesting.
And because I thought, like, this is so funny. As a kid, I would always be like, so what if you get to heaven and like someone, because they would always tell you like heaven is a perfect place. And
Mhm.
everything that is perfect to you will be there. So if there's someone you want to see, they'll be there. And I was like, yeah, but what if like you don't want to see them? Like what if you are in their perfect place, but like they are not in your perfect place? And because
Oh.
I was like, that sounds terrible. Like, I
Oh
would
my God, I
not
totally
want
see
to
that.
be stuck. And I also thought heaven sounded kind of boring. I don't know. but that was like my little kid brain just being like, this just seems like not that fun. Like,
Well, I was always kind of creeped out by heaven and angels, thinking like, are they watching me like misbehave? You know, I'd be like,
mm,
oh shit, like they're up in heaven. Can they just like press a button and watch everything I do? And then I'm like, oh my God, sometimes I get naked. And like, I was like very self conscious of like the angels up there who were just like watching me, watching over me felt kind of like a sentence that I didn't deserve. And I was like, I don't want people looking at what I'm doing, especially because I was kind of a naughty kid and I was like lying and shit, just being a
yeah.
general brat and like biting my sisters and shit. So, like, that's not good. I'm like, I don't want anyone seeing this. Like,
Yeah. I don't it's so funny because I went to Catholic school my whole entire life. Like I went to church twice a week from the time I was like, I don't know, like 5 until I was like 18. And I just never thought of angels as like beings who like hung around a lot. Like I just thought they did like just whatever just angel shit. Like they just like hung out with other angels and I didn't really feel like they were that interested in people. But they would like if you needed them they would come and they would like hang out and give you reassurance and just be like it's cool you're just doing it just whatever you know
yeah,
and that's all still how view them to this day.
I
I do
love
see them
that.
as definitely very like loving, but I think that's the thing too is like I never saw angels as judgmental the way that sometimes I think guides are judgmental. Not like they are judgmental, but they'll be a guide will be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Where an angel will
Right.
just be like, "It's okay." You know? I think that's one of the biggest differences between angels and guides to me
Oh,
also.
guides are so, my guys are judgmental as fuck.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the ways that you can communicate with your guides and some of the ways that guides involve themselves with your life. I'm talking to Taylor.
Okay. So I think I really started communicating with my guides after listening to Lindsay Mack's podcast, Tarot for the Wild Soul. And she talks a lot about communicating with spirit. And I was like, ooh, I want to do that. I want to communicate with spirit. I want to hear whatever she's hearing, whatever information she's getting. I want to be able to do that. And she just kept saying, like, the more you talk, the more they respond. The more you say to a guide, I want to hear from you, or I want to see you. I want to feel you. Show me something. Give me something. They respond. And I found that to be entirely true. The more I asked for certain signs, signals, words, phrases, numbers, whatever it was, I got it. And then I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I think it is, I feel really lucky to have the sort of whatever, if you want to call them the clairs, whatever they have. I feel like I see really clearly. I hear really clearly. When I'm getting a message, it comes to me in words in my brain. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
hear shit. And when I see things, when I was like doing the Reiki session with you and I could see it, it was like I see it in my mind's eye, whatever it is that the message is. So I feel I feel so grateful that that's the way things come through. But they definitely didn't until I said to my guides, I want to have this experience.
Mm-hmm.
And until I said to them, until I consented, basically. Like, I think that's another thing that's really amazing about any sort of spiritual communication is like, it does not happen without your consent. And if you do not consent to hear, to see, to whatever, or if you start, I think it happened to me a lot as a little kid that I would like get these big intuitive hits, or I would hear something or feel something or think I thought I saw something. And I would be like, no, 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 no. I don't want that. I don't want to see it. Don't, whatever that was, go away. And it went away. And then I kept, like kind of cut myself off from it. And now as I have like embraced that, like, oh yes, this is something I want. This is definitely something I want in my life. I want to see, I want to hear more, more, more. Please, please, please. It started happening.
Right.
But you definitely
I
have to like consent to it.
I mean, I feel like it's not so much without your consent, because what you just described is it came to you without your consent, and as soon as you said no to it, it went away. And I
Yeah,
think there are a lot of people who have freaky experiences, is what they would call them, seeing ghosts, seeing dead people in their homes, and they didn't ask for that shit. But maybe what you're explaining is just ask it to go away nicely, and maybe it
totally.
will. I personally have never seen a ghost. I've never felt the presence of a ghost. um So I can't relate to that experience, but I imagine that I would be pretty fucking scared if that did happen because I'm already afraid of all that shit when it's just in movies. So I mean, I haven't really tested it, but I think, yeah, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying because I think I've made it pretty clear to the universe that, like, I'm not ready for ghosts. I'm not ready for shit moving around. Like, I'm just a scared person when it comes to like supernatural shit. So I definitely, it's been baby steps getting into communications with guides and definitely angels because that's barely started, but because I'm afraid of what they have to say. I'm afraid of what they'll ask me to do. I mean, on a base level, I'm afraid of seeing shit and saying, where the fuck did that come from? Now I'm like double locking doors and shit, you know? But so, yeah, it is a slow process of just being like, are you ready to have conversations with guides? If you're not, then it will continue to come to you in subconscious ways or ways that you're not necessarily fully conscious of. And it can be ignored or not, but you'll always have the gut feelings and we all have that, like, I wanted to call you and then you called, and a lot of those things that are messages from guides that we just chalk up to coincidence if if we're being very worldly, I'll call it. If
Yeah.
we're not acknowledging something bigger.
Yeah. I think that's kind of an interesting thing too about guides and even angels is that like if you don't ultimately believe that there is like a single power, if you don't believe in God, basically, you can still believe in being guided, even
Mhm.
being divinely guided without believing
Mhm.
in God and still
Totally.
believing that there are other forces at play that don't have some like ultimate creator source, you know?
Mm.
Like
I
you can
wonder.
still find that connection.
Yeah. I mean, I fully believe that. I wonder though, for the truly atheist person, if they feel like they have guides and are guided. And for the person who truly fully believes in, I don't want to call it free will, but like just like human autonomy. I don't know. There's a philosophy that I'm looking for. Like there's something, this is a discussion in, you know, philosophy and I forget
Mm-hmm.
what I'm talking about, but for the person who just believes in no higher power, believes in man's will, do you have guides? This is a question for the audience. And I think a lot of times, the difference between atheist and agnostic will pop up a lot. Like agnostic is like, I believe there might be something, but I'm not attaching myself to any story around any of it. And atheism is like, no, I believe in man and that's
Yeah.
it. And is man guided by guides? Or, you know,
Yeah.
the
I
question not for me because I
right.
don't relate at all to atheism. It doesn't I couldn't even begin to understand the perspective of atheism because there's too much left unexplained for me to even be able to believe that it's a possibility to truly be atheist, but
Mm. I would rather be wrong. Like if whatever, we all get to the end and nothing happens, like it gives me more comfort to think about it this way.
mm,
So, that's okay.
no, it gives me so much comfort to think about it this way. And but I think that's the point of
Yeah.
guides
Yeah,
and
exactly.
angels, to give you comfort. And if you don't need comfort, then signs will come in other ways and you just won't call them signs. It's very easy to move through life never believing in guides, never believing in angels, but like still following the signs. Like I
Yeah.
knew I wanted to be a doctor since I was 7 years old. Maybe a guide was like, hey, you should become a doctor. But you don't look at that moment like that. You just see it as something in you wanted to
Mm.
do this thing. And even like, I just got a bad feeling about that guy. Could be a guide too, but maybe you believe that that came right out of you, but maybe the guides are in you. I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to persuade people,
Mm.
which is not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying, like, yeah, I feel like we are guided in life, and whether we want to say it's by guides or angels, or whether we just want to say it by our own consciousness, they might be the same thing.
Yeah. Anytime this conversation comes up, I feel always like totally happy to tell people that I believe I'm communicating with guides and with angels. And like if that does not vibe with them, totally cool. I definitely don't feel like I'm always just like, okay. Like
Have you come through, like, have you been in a session where people are like, I don't believe in that shit, don't talk about that?
Um, no. I feel like most of the time people who really feel super strongly about that like have a hard time getting into like they don't want a tarot session. So I haven't had that. I think the biggest thing is just that people will be like, "Oh, you're the fortune teller," or like which I don't definitely I definitely don't vibe with that line of thinking. And sometimes like when someone's like, "Oh, you're the fortune teller," I could be like, "No, I'm actually the angels and guide communicator that has some cards, and that is how the information best comes through for me." Like
Mm,
most of the time, I think when someone comes in with an attitude of like, "I don't believe in this," I'm like, "Cool, I don't want you." You
mhm,
know, like I don't ever really feel pressed to like convince someone
mhm.
of what I'm doing or why it might help them. Or yeah, I can't think of a single moment ever actually that I've been like, I want to change this person's mind.
Mhm.
Like I'm mostly like, it's gonna come for you when it does, or it
Right.
won't, you know?
Right.
Like, yeah, yeah. I think that's mostly how I feel about it.
Was this coming off the tail of a question? Did I ask a question? I asked, how do you communicate your, and what sorts of messages do they give you? That was, oh my God, we took so much, we're taking so much space in between that I'm
Oh,
forgetting what
that's
I'm
okay.
asking. But no, no, I think it's good. It's flowing well. But yeah, the second part of the question is what types of, like, you can be specific about a
Mhm.
message that you've received from guides recently.
My so when my guides are talking to me personally, I think I have two main guides that I've gotten to know more and more over time. I know a lot of people love to know their guides' names, and I don't know why. I just don't really feel concerned about that. Like, if I'm
Mhm.
always like, sometimes I'll be like, "What's your name?" And I have one guy that's very playful that just like will be like, "I have many names," and like
Mhm.
he's just really goofy. And my other guide also is just kind of elusive, and she doesn't really feel particularly attached to names either, so I haven't cared to get to know them. So I've just kind of been like, okay, cool, I'm glad when they show up. But things they say, I will hear things in like these phrases. So and this is like when I'm not in session, and usually I just hear it like in my head. Like a message I've been getting a lot is, "You're not a victim, you're not a savior,"
Ooh.
over and over and over again. And I think that that's something that like I'm like, I know, I know, but for some reason it's just like not clicking to me. So they keep telling me that you're not a victim, you're not a savior. And another message I was getting, which I felt like was kind of meant for more than me, was you are no more and no less divine than anyone else, and you are no more and no less human than anyone else. And I feel like that's sort of the thing that my guides are really trying to get through to me, is that like I'm clearly having a really hard time right now in this human experience, and they're like, so is everyone. And even though it's like, even though I push so hard to hear them and see them and know them and experience them, they're like, it's all the same. Like you
Mm,
can't, it's not like it's all the same, but like, yeah, if you want it, it's available. But like these people that you think have this just are so divine and are so divinely connected, like they are as divine as you.
mm.
And they are also as divine as the person who doesn't believe in any of this,
Ah, yes.
and they're also just as human. I'm just as
Yes.
human as the person telling you I talk to angels and guides, as a 2-year old is human. We're all the same amount of human. We're all the same amount of divine. And I think that that's like a message I've been getting over and over too.
Wow. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. I right now am experiencing like a huge swelling in my heart by listening to you talk about this, and it feels divine, and it feels like this is definitely a conversation despite the fact that we didn't plan it at all. This is like a conversation that I was meant to have, and I'm like grateful for it. This is me being present. I've been really present lately.
Oh,
But anyway, thanks for that.
yeah.
Sorry
But I
for the
think
brief interruption.
I think that's like when we've had starts of episodes where even when we do like what's the vibe, that's sort of
Right.
us just being like, what kind of synchronicities are you experiencing?
Mhm.
What's come up for you? What's
Mm.
when I ask someone like what's in your field, that's kind of what I mean is like what messages are you getting? You
Mhm.
know? And I think that like we actually talk about it all the time.
Right. So I also have two guides. I think of one of them as a young girl. She
Mm.
might be like, I think of her as a child, and she's super playful, and she laughs along the way with me and is way more gentle on me, barely tells me what to do, and is kind of just like, I have an idea. This might be fun. Like, that's her energy. And a lot of what comes out of me is like, she said it might be fun, like, let's try it out, like having no idea where it's going to take me, having no clue what I'm even doing it for. It's just, I'm like, she just wants to play. And then I have another guide, and I think of him as a man,
Mhm.
and I think of him as someone like in his mid 40s who like, and I also think of them really purely spiritually. I don't know if they were human ever. And if they were, it was a long time ago, and it has nothing. They don't like, he's not like, oh, like I've worked corporate before. Like he doesn't have that energy, but like I think of him in that way because I've attached a story to him. And he's like in his mid 40s, and he's figured out life, and he's got balance down, and he comes on me way harder. He's like, Jay,
Mm.
you know what you need to do. You know what I'm going to ask you to do. And you know it's something you don't want to do, but when you're ready, you'll do it because it's what you should do. And he doesn't say should, because he's like, live your life. But like, and then I come to both of my guides being like, why is life so hard? And his response is like, you know. And her response is like, what do you mean? But so yeah, so two very different energies. They come to me kind of at the same time, but one of them will compete for the mic. They're not competing. They coexist, they love each other. But like in my mind, they're competing for the
Mm.
mic, and one of them's always going to win out. I never take like dual advice. It's kind of like the angel and devil on your shoulder, but they're both angels, or they're both deliverers of good things, and I could listen to either one, and maybe it would land me in the same place. I don't even know. I haven't been so critical to calculate like what happens when I listen to this guide versus what happens when I listen to that guide. It's just, I know they're both there, and I know they both have their own way of communicating with me. And then the messages that I get from them are stories. It's
Mm.
almost always stories. And that's why I think I have such good communication in the dream world, because I'm seeing stories play out. And like I'll watch the movie of my dream, whatever you want to call it, and then I wake up like you said with a sentence, but I never think the sentence is not from my guides. The story, the dream, the movie was from my guides, and then the sentence is always me intellectualizing it. So
Mm.
for me, I still get a little bit tripped up over the messages because it's still me processing them with my intellectual brain, and that will distort any type of divine message because the brain is doing weird shit that like spirit doesn't really understand. They're like, why are you doing that human brain thing? They're like, no, 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 you no, but just live it out. So i'm I sometimes get feelings in my soul where I'm just like, do this. And I think of those as also messages from my guides, obviously. But I think when I like get a message that I'm calling a message, it often gets distorted through my intellectual processing. And I'm really trying, that's something in this act of like being present that I've been working on. That's something I'm really trying to leave at the front door of my spiritual experience, because it is interesting feeling something so divine like a dream, or something coming out of it meditation. Then as soon as I put it through my mouth like into words, I'm like, ooh, something happened in that processing. and it's not good. It's not bad. It's just I definitely see how I sometimes misinterpret the message.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think sometimes what happens with me is I just don't do anything. I don't say
Right.
anything. I won't even talk about like I got this message from my
Right.
guide. Like I never say shit like that. And
Right.
it's my guides are both very gentle. Like they're very gentle with me. All the stuff that is hard on me is just myself, my
Mhm.
human brain. It's like, yeah, it's all me
Yeah.
that makes it complicated, and they don't make it complicated. They make it very easy.
Right. It's not ever complicated.
Yeah, to a guide, I think a guide can like sympathize with you, and a guide can empathize with you and say like, yeah, I know that like I think that's what's so amazing about when you get to communicate when you where you're like, yeah, I want to hear this message. To a guide, it's just like total possibility.
Mhm.
And like they just want you to see yourself with this limitless potential that they see in you.
Yes. Wow, that is so beautiful. It's so true. It is infinite possibility. And I think a lot of times, okay, when you're first starting to communicate with guides and you're like, oh, I just want to see if I can do this. I'm about to talk about this because I really am still almost actively in the feeling. Like it's so fresh in my memory of asking guides for a sign and something pops into your head and you say, did I just make that up?
Mhm.
Or was it, and it's like it's like that is such a huge barrier to try, and you have to get past that, like that's something where you cannot, that is a barrier to communication with your guides. It just assume that anything that pops up in your head, bad, good, scary, weird, random, is somehow a communication from your guide. And even if it doesn't make sense now, like don't make it the point to try and make it make sense. Just be like, okay, I'm getting messages. Maybe communicate again and say, hey, can you be a little more clear? That was weird and it made me uncomfortable. And I don't know if that was even a message, maybe another one, and just continue to have that dialogue. And I think that definitely grows the more that you practice communicating with your guides. Because in the beginning, you're just going to be like, I'm making shit up in my head. I'm not intuitive. I'm not spiritual. This is just me making up a story. But then it's like, how do you think you made up a story and why? You're like,
Yeah.
how did you make a story up in your head? Something was influential on creating that story. So maybe it has some significance and you're just like writing it off as like some flick of the imagination. But it's like, what else is imagination for? To show you infinite possibilities. So that is, like you said, a gift from your guides. There are possibilities.
Yeah. That's it. That's like the most amazing and like really beautiful thing about it to me is like I feel, and when I connect to other people's guides too, it's like they honestly and truly want the best for you. They want your, that's why I always call it in. I'm always like, angels and guides of the highest and best. They actually want your best, the best. And it's not some like idealized version of your best. It's not like, I don't know. That's the thing. It's like it's not, you're not the victim and you're not the savior to your guides.
Mhm.
It's like they only ever see you as your best.
You.
And like, yeah, exactly. It's just a really beautiful thing. Sometimes when I did a meditation the other day where I like connected with one of my guides and asked a bunch of questions, and it's just this almost like overwhelming sense of love,
Mm.
which is just like such a wonderful feeling. So,
Mm.
I know that like probably of all the episodes we've had, this is just the most woo and full of buzzwords and all over the place, but I'm coming off of like 3 days of no sleep, and
No, I
but
think no, I think this is powerful.
yeah, that also doesn't make it anything any less true about anything I've said about communicating with angels and guides. Well, I was going to say too, I think this is, yeah, we've definitely been a little bit rambly. We definitely didn't come into this with any like specific questions, but I know we say this every episode, but if anyone does have questions or just want to share experiences, or if you're listening to this and you're like, I have a very specific experience of communicating with guides or angels, we'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear
Yeah.
it. I think it really is one of those things that everybody does differently. The way that you experience spiritual communication can be so different from person to person. The way you see, hear, smell, taste, experience, whatever way you receive information, it's I think honestly that's the most amazing thing about being in a human body is like
Mm,
that for the most part we get to experience things in different sensory ways, and you know,
yeah.
it makes the vessel just, I don't know, such an experience.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, speaking of making the vessel an experience, I think this ties back to our embodiment episode. And I mean, it ties back to a lot of what we've been talking about, but something that's so important to understand communication with guides is first the work of understanding what it feels like to be in your body. And that is so buzzword, but I'm glad we've already had the embodiment episode. You're not going to have like a clear, conscious communication with your guides until you recognize the difference between feeling nauseous and feeling like something's coming. You know, and like that's like that has to do a lot with meditation and awareness, sitting with yourself and saying, huh, my stomach feels a little weird. What is this feeling? It's not just a weird feeling stomach, because we're going to call that feeling nauseated no matter what, you know? But then maybe when you listen to it a little more, you're like, actually, something's also going on in my head that's talking about this stomach issue, and it's telling me that I'm afraid of something. Or, you know, and then the more you talk to it, you're like, actually, I know what I'm afraid of, and it's this. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to understand my body. So then now you have this awareness of your body, and you go back in and you say, like, hey, I want to talk to my guides. What's up? And then you get a weird feeling in your stomach again. And you're like, oh, I recognize this fear. And then the guides are like, hey, we're just letting you know, don't be afraid, you know? And then you're like, oh, I get it now. Like there's so many layers to first being in tune with yourself, then being in tune with, you know, your emotional experiences as separate from your physical experiences. And then another layer up is like, ooh, there's a next level. It involves guides, it involves angels, it involves something beyond me, and it takes a little time to get there. So
Yeah. This is something also Lindsay Mack talked about. And I don't even know. I'll have to kind of dig through her episodes and see if I can find. I don't even think she said, like, she didn't name the episode communication with guides or anything like that. I think she literally just talked about a tarot card, but she talked a lot about like what it means to come into it. And I think I've mentioned it in this podcast before with dirty hands, where it's like, yeah, even though like I have had some really great, clear communication when I asked for it and I meant to. Like, I've also shown up just a disaster and,
mm,
you know, didn't do some big meditation. And I just said, like, I need help, or like, I'm confused, I'm scared, I'm alone. Like, what's going on? And it's,
mm,
yeah, it's like, I think that's the thing. Like, when you ask, you're going to get something
mm,
eventually, or you know, I think sometimes it happens in super subtle ways, and definitely an embodiment practice can help you feel out those subtleties, but yeah, I think it might come through really subtly, or you might come in with dirty hands feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not
mm,
sitting in meditation, I'm cooking dinner, or I'm whatever, I'm like picking up my kids from school and I'm just like, I'm frazzled, I'm a wreck. And
mm.
you can still get great messages then
Ah,
too.
yes. Wow, that was beautiful. I think this conversation has been beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think this is something to bring into so many aspects of our lives, to ask for guidance. And even if not to ask for guidance, just to follow the signs, whether you ask or not, follow the signs that present themselves in your life. Follow your intuition, is what is commonly known to us. Follow your heart. And a lot of times, what comes through the intuition and through the heart is messages from guides. And so, and then when people say, just trust the universe, now I'm starting to understand this. I didn't really have this awareness before, but that could just be like, know that your angels are holding you, you know, and just feel safe. Just know that angels are there keeping you safe.
Yeah. I call on angels when I want to feel safe, when I want to feel loved and held and reassured. I think angels show up in synchronicities. They're not as
Angel
direct.
numbers.
Yeah, angel numbers. I don't think angels are always as like persistent as guides,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't answer you. I mean, for me, that someone listening could have a totally different experience with angels. Like for me, they don't answer me the way my guides do.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just there. They're a comforting presence. They surround me. I feel it. I feel the energy of it, and I know when it's an angel and when it's a guide. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to say it any other way except for just like I just know.
Right.
But I think that's it. It's like you said, like I believe in everything. When I get a feeling and I'm like, "Oh, what is this?" If I'm like angel, I'm like, "That's an angel," and I just believe it. Like I just
Yeah.
believe it the first time, and I just don't question it too much. So, but if you are a person who is questioning or, is having a different experience, we'd love to hear about it, and we'd honestly love to talk to you or
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of
It could
see
be
what else is
interesting.
coming up.
Yeah. It could be interesting to hear how everybody else's guides show up. I know we talked about our own. We just see everyone else's experience with getting messages from guides, how the messages come through. Oh, I forgot to give an example of one of my messages.
Oh yeah.
Recently I've been dreaming about living my life out in parking lots. And that is not to say that I like live in a home in a parking lot. It's more like everything that's happening in my dreams is happening in a parking lot. Like
Mm.
I have had pool parties in parking lots, and I've had arguments in parking lots, and I've had friend breakups in parking lots, and I was in the parking lot of a grocery store and I found out it shut down and I was devastated. These are all in my dreams. Just my life is being played out in parking lots, which is funny because normally, parking lot, you come, you go, you don't think twice about it. It's just like a passing transient place. And I was like, why am I dreaming about parking lots? And then this morning it came to me that maybe my guides are trying to tell me that the bulk of life is lived out in what you perceive to be the mundane,
Mm.
and the quotidian. And you think you're just here to come and go out of this, but this is actually where something is coming to you, something big in your life. So embrace the mundane. So that's a message. And I mean, that's a message I've been hanging on to. It feels right because right now I feel like I'm living a mundane fucking existence, living in my mom's house and just feeling impotent, for lack of a better word. But then I'm like, okay, actually, a huge part of my life is playing out here in what I thought was like a flyover stop at mom's that has turned into a year of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I get it. So wait, should we wrap it up? That's
Yeah. That's beautiful. I like it. I think that's great. Let us know how you feel.
Yeah, I think this was great, and I hope this encouraged those who don't have a relationship yet with their guides to go and seek one out, because it could be very supportive.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. Should we do what's the vibe?
Yes, what's the vibe? Let's do it.
Do you have a vibe?
Oh shit. I always come in here just not thinking about it. I think I did think about it. Wait, do you have one?
Mm, I mean, yeah, kind of. I think.
Okay, this vibe actually goes really well with the conversation we just had. But my vibe is presence.
Mm,
And that is just so like, I know it's out there. It's like, but I have really been struggling to be present for so long. I mean, I think it's something we all struggle with, and it's a lifetime struggle. Like, you're never going to always be present, but like, I don't think I even understood what it meant until this week, till last week, right? So it's been a week that I've been feeling extremely present and being able to anchor myself back into the present often and with ease, which was not the case before. And it was because I had this final session with my mentor last week, and at the end of it I was just like, oh, all is lost. I feel like shit. I felt depressed. I was like, it's been 2 months and I haven't figured it out. I figured nothing out, like that. And that was me, like, very egoic, thinking that there is anything to figure out. But then I was doing one of these practices. It was a mirror practice, and I was looking in the mirror, and I mean, it literally was exactly like you read about in books. Suddenly, everything just clicked. And I was like, I get it. And then I was like, I didn't even want to say I get it. I was like, you shouldn't even say I get it, because maybe there's nothing to get. So you don't say I get it. I was just like, I see. And I think in that moment, my guides were like, oh my God, she sees. And they were like, yes, it's been fucking years. We've been wanting her to get this message. Like, she got it. She got it. She figured it out. And then, not an hour later, I read a book by Alan Watts, and he literally, word for word, in his essay, described the exact experience that I had looking in the mirror that morning. And it was, I mean, it was such a crazy experience for me. I'm still riding the waves of just like, I mean, he wrote the book in 1950. This is no news. I'm sure so many people sit down trying to have a Zen practice, and they come to this realization. The realization that I had, I don't think I have time to explain it. All I know is that before, I thought I was at war with myself, and in I thought, there's something in me that wants this, and there's something in me that wants that, and why can't I get them to agree? And that was my experience, and that was a huge source of my depression, my feelings of feeling lost and confused. And in this experience that I had looking in the mirror, I was like, they are just me, and there's only one me, and one thing cannot be in conflict with itself. It just is one thing. And I was like, so I'm just consciousness. There is no two parts of me that are fighting for something or fighting to take me over. There's just me. And then as soon as I got that, it was like everything just decided. It's like when you win a solitaire game, and then everything's just like, we're just gonna shuffle into place. Everything's coming into place. And I was like seeing lessons like shuffle into place in that moment. And I still feel this way. Oh my God, that was so long. But anyway, that's my vibe. Presence. I'm going to add, the book is called This Is It by Alan Watts. And it's like 4 or 5 of his popular essays from the early 1950s. And I'll pop in a quote about the experience that I had. But the book is just a really good lesson on like Zen, but like Zen with cheek. It is not,
Hmm.
it's not like hardcore Japanese Zen, and it's not, I mean, it's like American Zen. That's Alan Watts. So I will put that in the show notes, and that's my vibe.
I
What's your
like
vibe,
it.
Taylor?
Okay, my vibe is I feel like actually maybe this is a part of myself I haven't shared on this podcast before, but it's been a huge part of my life for like the last few years. So here we go. My vibe is Star Trek Next Gen.
I was not expecting that.
I was thinking about it and I was just like, yeah, that's totally my vibe this week because Halloween is coming up, one, and I ordered my costume, not gonna lie, like months ago, and it's a Star Trek costume. Me and Joey are dressing as some next gen characters, and we're coming up on the like final episodes of the last season, and watching Star Trek Next Gen has been such a like mainstay of my life for the past few years. Like we watch it all the time. I watch it almost as much as I watch Love Island. So if that
Oh
tells
my
you
gosh.
anything, I've just been like secretly watching Star Trek. I mean, we have tons of friends who know we watch Star Trek, but yeah, it's like when I think also about just kind of like the Star Trek Next Gen is a very like ideal world to me. I love it. I love the characters in Next Gen. Captain Picard is just what a man. I think he's like a perfect person, Captain Picard. And just like such an honorable guy. He always does the right thing. He always has some just wise shit to say. And yeah, me and Joey have been having this kind of like fantasy about having some of our other like Star Trek friends, people who like Star Trek, having them over and like making like a Star Trek themed, because they have this bar in Star Trek called 10 Forward. And we were like, oh yeah, we would make some like 10 forward drinks and we could set up, because for our Halloween costumes, we're gonna like set up a green screen and like film a little video in our costumes. And we were like, oh yeah, we could have like the green screen going with like a Star Trek backdrop so people could like get some cute like pictures or videos, and we'll have these themed drinks. And obviously we'll all dress up. And for Christmas last year, he got me Next Gen Monopoly. So that's what we would play. Like at the party, we would play
Oh.
this Next Gen Monopoly. It's like this actually gorgeous vintage board game that he got me for Christmas, which we haven't opened because we were like, when he gave it to me last Christmas, he was like, oh my God, we have to have some people over and like play this. And I was like, yes, because it's not fun to play Monopoly with just two people.
Right.
But I was thinking like last night when we were at the Airbnb, we were like trying to watch Star Trek, and it was kind of glitching out. So we didn't get to watch it, but we've been watching it every night while we've been away because we didn't want to start the new season of Love Island. And we're like about to finish Star Trek. So I'm going to be kind of sad when it's over, but we'll probably just keep watching it. And so many people have been like, oh, yeah, well, like Deep Space Nine is great. And like, I'm like such a Captain Picard loyalist that I
How
just don't
many
even know if
seasons
I'm
are there?
of Next Gen 7.
I've never seen it.
Oh my God, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's so good.
Where is it from? When is it from?
I actually don't even know. I think like the 80s. I think it's like the 80s into the 90s because people start looking like they're in the 90s by the end of it.
Okay,
They
my mom used to watch it then.
it's so good.
Wow, I mean I definitely remember being in my mom's bed and watching it with her, but I've never seen it as an adult, and I should. I mean, I you've inspired me to check it out. I always tune into your vibes, like if they are something that is tune intoable.
Oh, thanks. But talk about something that like just gives comfort. Star Trek loves to teach a lesson. So there's like a character that's an android, and they are constantly having this battle of like, is Data a sentient being? And like as Data like develops consciousness as an android, like what does that mean? You know?
Oh my God, that's such a now conversation.
But that's always what I come back around to, is like every time I think something is new, I'm like, well, like what you were just talking about. You're like, yeah, this book came out in like 1959.
Yeah.
And like that,
51.
yeah, 51. Like it's like, yeah, people have been on this shit forever.
Right.
And like I'm so glad that we're discovering it and getting to talk about it, and getting to talk about it in a way like on a podcast. But like, nothing new here.
Right.
It's just like
Right. I mean, angels and guides, that shit's a tale as old as time.
they've been around forever. So
And it's like, it's new age as much as new age is like since the dawn of time.
right. Yeah, but that's my vibe. I am looking forward to watching Star Trek tonight and just like settling back into my little life here, not on the road
Happy to have you
anymore.
home.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here with you. I'm back with my little backdrop and, you know.
You know.
Okay, well, I guess that's it for us. And
We hope you enjoyed this episode. I mean, I honestly loved this episode.
oh, good.
It was like a conversation that just felt good to have.
Yeah, I'm excited to listen back to it because I feel like I honestly don't even know what I said, which is sometimes how I feel. And I listen back and I'm like, what the fuck was I talking about? And then it's just like too late. It just has to go out. So it's just like I just cut out all the dead space, and there we go.
It's divinely channeled.
Truly.
All right. So we hope you loved this episode. If you did, leave us a 5-star review.
We'll send you an old remedy revealed since we didn't do a tarot card today.
Seriously. I can't even talk about remedies revealed right now, but yeah, just leave us a 5-star review. It helps Vibes Revealed get, filtered up through the spiritual and wellness podcast world so that people find out who we are. So if you love us, if you want more people to hear about us, the best way to do it is to leave a 5-star review and then tell your friends.
Yeah. And if you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Vibes Revealed. We haven't been in either of those places actually in a bit, but we'll see if we come back to that soon. And you can also always email us. Have you checked the email lately?
It's on my phone. It comes through on my
Oh,
phone.
okay, amazing. I haven't checked the email in literally a month. So, but that said, you can email us vibesrevealedpodcast at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
We would love to know what you want to know more about, what you're curious about, what's been popping up for you in the world of wellness that makes no sense. It's all open season.
Yes. Yay. Okay. Well, that's it. We love you. I love you. Your guides love you. Angels love you. And if
Love
you need
you.
anything else, let us know.
Yay. Have a good day.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.